Three different translations, so please don't be alarmed if I read a different word from what you have. Sometimes somebody jumps up. He who brought, this is Saparshadago or Virat, but this is prayer and lamentation, separation from Sri Mahaprabhu and his associates. It's written by Narottam Das Thakur in Bengali. He who brought the treasure of prema out of his great compassion. Where is such a venerable personality as Sri Srinivasa Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar Goswami and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatana Goswami? Where is Raghunath Das Goswami, the savior of the fallen souls? Where are my Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami? Where is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami? Where has Gauranga, the king of the dancers, suddenly gone? I shall dash my head upon a stone or enter into fire. Oh, where should I go to find Gauranga, the treasure house of all divine qualities? Unable to attain the association of that Sri Srinivasa Acharya, who performed pastimes with the associates of Mahaprabhu, Narottam Das weeps. And as we will see, there's a natural transition from today's purport to discussion of these acharyas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we'll discuss, among other things, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 14. Ashesha Sanklesha Shamam Vidhate Ashesha Sanklesha Samam Vidhate Gunanuvada Shravanam Murade Gunanuvada Shravanam Murade Kim Va Unas tat charanaravinda kimva punastat charanaravinda paraga seva rati atmalabdha paraga seva ratiratmalabdha ashesha sanklesha samang vidhatte gunanuvada shravanam murare kimva punastat charanaravinda paraga seva ratiratmalabdha ashesha sanklesha samang vidhatte gunanuvada shravanam murare kimva punastat charanaravinda paraga seva ratiratmalabdha others please.
Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte Gunanuvada shravanam murare Kivat punastat charanaravinda Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte Gunanuvada saranam murare Kimva punastat charanaravinda Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha
Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte
Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte
Gunanuvada shravanam murare Kimva punastat charanaravinda
Kimva punastat charanaravinda
Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha
Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte Gunanuvada shravanam murare Kimva punastat charanaravinda Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha
Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte
Ashesha sanklesha samam vidhatte
Gunanuvada shravanam murare
Gunanuvada shravanam murare
Kimva punastat charanaravinda
Kimva punastat charanaravinda
Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha
Paraga seva ratiratmalabdha
Synonyms: ashesha,
Ashesha
unlimited,
unlimited
sanklesha,
sanklesha
miserable conditions,
shamam
cessation,
cessation
vidhatte,
vidhatte
can perform, gunanuvada, of the transcendental name, form, qualities, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia, etc. Shravanam, hearing and chanting. Murare, of Murari, Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Kimva, what to speak of. Punaha, again. Tat, his. Charana Aravinda, lotus feet. Raga Seva,
Raga Seva,
flavorful dust. I'm sorry, this, to the service of the flavorful dust.
to the service of the flavorful dust.
See, I'm about enjoying the flavorful dust rather than serving it, apparently. Rati,
Rati,
attraction.
attraction.
Atmalabdha,
Atmalabdha,
those who have gained such self-achievement.
those who gain such self-achievement.
Translation. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have gained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet. Responsively, please. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc.
Of the transcendental name, form, etc.
of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna,
Of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna,
one can achieve the cessation
one can achieve the cessation
of unlimited miserable conditions.
of unlimited miserable conditions.
Therefore, what to speak of those
Therefore, speak of those
who have attained attraction
who gain attraction,
for serving the flavor
serving the flavor
of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet.
of the dust of the Lord's feet.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. Two different methods for controlling the material senses are recommended in the Vedic scriptural wisdom. One of them is the process of jnana, or the path of philosophical understanding of the Supreme, Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So we can see right here how this verse continues the same stream of thought from the previous few verses. This is a whole idea being presented here through several verses. The other is that of direct engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So we saw this yesterday, how these two different things are being addressed, and especially we took a quick look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on that verse and saw how he made this very stark distinction between the two. They're both ways of controlling the senses. One's more natural and considerably more effective than the other. Of these two most popular methods, the path of devotional service is recommended here as the best, because one on the path of devotional service does not have to wait for the attainment of fruitive results of pious activities, for the results of knowledge. The two stages of executing devotional service are first, the stage of practicing devotional service with our present senses under the regulation of the recognized scriptures, and second, attaining sincere attachment for serving the particles of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. The first stage is called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service for the neophyte, which is rendered under the direction of a pure devotee. The second stage is called raga bhakti, in which the mature devotee automatically takes to the various services of the Lord out of sincere attachment. The great sage Maitreya now gives the final answer to all the questions of Vidura. So now we come, and this is the exclamation point. We saw a little video that one of my students shared with our class on end punctuation the other day. And it was a very abrupt end coming to a very exciting video. But here this is like, now we're coming to the real point. The real point is, it's really all about devotional service to the Lord. We see that from the beginning to the end of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The great sage Maitreya now gives the final answer to all the questions of Vidura. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate means to mitigate all the miserable conditions of material existence. The path of knowledge, or that of mystic gymnastics, may be adopted as a means for the purpose, but unless mixed with bhakti or devotional service, they're unable to award the desired result. This is something we hear, especially from Jiva Goswami, that and we hear it from the Bhagavatam as well. Jiva Goswami emphasizes it, that the other spiritual or spiritual-ish practices, including karma kanda, which you could say is spiritual-ish because it's inspired by the Lord, and it has as its ultimate goal, attainment of service to the Lord's lotus feet, but way ultimate. Unless there's some admixture of bhakti in them, there's no chance of success. There has to be just a little bit. By practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti, and by performing raga bhakti in loving transcendental service, one can even control the supreme, powerful Lord. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Jakrapatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpataru Dishtakrapa Sindho Videvacha Patitam Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So there are a couple of points to make with this. We see that if we look at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, we see that this is very much drawn from his commentary. He says between jnana and bhakti, which is better when it comes to destroying ignorance, bhakti is better. And he points out that it's sadhana bhakti that destroys ignorance, and it's sadhana bhakti that is ultimately responsible for bringing the Lord under control. His division is a little different and a little more in accord from what we see elsewhere in Srila Prabhupada's books and our Acharya's books. Our Tuesday evening Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu group just heard the other day. We were beginning the discussion of sadhana bhakti. What would be the second chapter? What were we? It's the second chapter of the Nectar of Devotion as well. But we're beginning a discussion of sadhana bhakti, and we see that bhakti is divided. There's three ways. Well, there's a couple of ways to divide bhakti, depending on how you want to do it. Overall, you could say there are two divisions. There's sadhana bhakti and sadhya bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means bhakti in practice, and sadhya bhakti means perfected bhakti. But the goal of sadhana bhakti, there's a sort of intermediate prayojana. There's an intermediate sadhya for the sadhakas, and that is to attain bhava bhakti. And then, as we saw the other day in both Nectar of Devotion and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, sadhana bhakti has two divisions. One is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and the other is Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So here, it looks as though there's a distinction between sadhana bhakti and Raganuga bhakti. But Raganuga bhakti is also sadhana bhakti. But it's something that begins, for most sadhakas, begins at higher stages of sadhana, maybe at the higher end of ruchi, or somewhere along in asakti. Ruchi means you have a taste for serving the Lord. Asakti means you become actually attached to the Lord himself. And then these carry us, draw us naturally into bhava bhakti. So Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami explain that although there's really just bhakti in practice and bhakti in perfection, there is this sort of intermediate stage which we call bhava bhakti. It's not completely perfected yet, and even the perfected is not completely perfected because there are stages in prema as well, according to the different taste of the devotee. So Raganuga, so he explains, Prabhupada explains in Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is for those who haven't yet attained this raga, this taste, this attachment to Krishna. And Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So it's going to be driven by faith in the scriptures and faith in the instruction of the Guru. And properly, when you look at the division, properly it leads to Vaikuntha Prem, what other sampradayas call moksha. But among the followers, the Rupanugas, which we're going to talk about in a bit, amongst the Rupanugas, Vaidhisadhana Bhakti can also be seen as Srila Jiva Goswami points out, I believe in Bhakti Sandarbha, as Ajataruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So we may not yet have a taste for attaining the kind of love that one of Krishna's intimate associates in Vrindavan has. We may not, but if we have a desire to develop such a desire by the association of advanced devotees, then Jiva Goswami says we could call that Ajataruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti in a sense. It's a very kind of generous way of looking at it. Because without that taste, we depend very much on following the kind of almost formulas that you see in the scriptures. Now, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Rupa Goswami is quick to point out when he gets to the end of the second chapter, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is going to look very much like Vaidhisadhana Bhakti. Out of 64 main angas of sadhana bhakti, the Raganuga, those who actually have this raga might neglect one or two. But they'll generally at least honor, if not strictly observe, the other 60 odd. And as we see here in Srila Prabhupada's, well, we see in the verse, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, etc., his paraphernalia, his associates, these things are particularly powerful forms of bhakti. And we see those in sadhakas, those engaged in sadhaka bhakti. We also see it in bhavukas, those engaged in bhava bhakti. And in bhava bhakti, because you have actually attained bhava, you've pretty much left all attraction to sense gratification behind. That's very much an internal kind of bhakti. There's external expressions. You're still going to do archana. You're still going to chant japa. You're still going to go nuts and kirtan. You're still going to relish Krishna Prasad. You're still going to eagerly seek out the association of devotees. But that's very much driven by an emotional need rather than a kind of more formal need. And then prema, you practically can't even hold on to a material body once you attain prema. They just don't seem to work together. It's like when matter and antimatter meet, the whole fabric of the universe becomes rent and everything falls apart. So this is, in Srila Prabhupada says, says that, of this verse that this is the real way to overcome misery. This is the real way to calm these the quivering we see on the surface of our heart, as we see on the surface of the water when there's even the slightest breeze. So, speaking of the association of devotees, this is not going to work. I thought I would be able to make this work. Because today's the anniversary of the disappearance of both Rupa Goswami and Gauridas Pandit, I wanted to read just a little bit about them. There's no way if we were going to sit here for the next week and a half, and we can't because Baladev's going to get in the way in a couple of days. He's going to want to have a little attention for himself. Take that plow off his shoulder and start wagging it if we ignore him. So I just wanted to, just a quick introduction to who they are. We all know, most of us know who Srila Rupa Goswami are and Srila Gauridas Pandit, at least to some extent. Rupa Goswami is one of the intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya, one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, Bande Rupa Sanatana Rajugo, Shri Jiva Gopalako. So he's the younger brother, and he considered himself the disciple of Srila Sanatana Goswami. And he was commissioned by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to write books on understanding the process of bhakti. So he wrote so many. He wrote wonderful plays. He wrote so much poetry. If you pay it, if you can get into just the Sanskrit, just the music of the Sanskrit of his poetry, there's one level of appreciating Srila Rupa Goswami's poetry. It's unbelievable. Just the play of sounds and words. You don't even need to know the meanings just to appreciate the music. There's not just end rhyme, there's internal rhyme, there's alliteration coming at your ears, and all kinds of play just with the forms of the words. And then when you take a look at the meanings, there's so much, just incredibly, it's so rich, it's just so packed with what we call poetic ornaments in English and what we call alankar ornaments in Sanskrit. It's just incredible. And my friend Dravida has for many years, 25, maybe going on 30 years now, been reworking translations of much of the poetry that we find in our tradition. And he's had so much fun with Srila Rupa Goswami. He's actually worked in alliteration and internal rhyme and all kinds of things into his reworking of the English translations of these poems. And I feel that this is not just part of his devotional heart, but also his musician's heart. He's able to appreciate so much of Rupa Goswami's poetry. He wrote important books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Prabhupada would so much emphasize the importance of understanding that. I mean, he presented Nectar of Devotion. He worked on that in 1968-69, published it in the summer, June of 1970, with the instructions that we study it and study it and study it and study it until we had not only had it become part of us, we had become part of it. So if you have questions, read it again, and if you still have questions, read it yet again. So, and then there's Ujjvala Nilamani, which is kind of a sequel to that. If we look at Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the section that discusses the different, the 5 different main rasas, the main flavors of love for Krishna, we see the one that's discussed most extensively is Sakya Rasa. And the one that's kind of dealt with in a very cursory manner is Madhurya Rasa, the highest of them. And so that's because he expands on that in the Ujjvala Nilamani. And then he's written plays, Lalita Madhava, Vidakta Madhava. He's collected poetry and written so much poetry himself. And he's a very important personality in our line. Because I'm going to run out of time, I just want to say a little bit about Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas Pandit is so important. Gauridas Pandit was an intimate associate of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. He was one of his 12 most intimate associates, generally referred to as the Devadasha Gopals. Lord Nityananda, as Balaram, had a relationship with Krishna of friendship, very intimate friendship, and a little superior friendship. His friendship, Baladev's friendship, is colored by just a little bit of parental love. So he's always looking out for Krishna. And Mother Yashoda, when they go out in the forest, every day she admonishes Baladev. Now, you keep that little brother of yours out of trouble. I don't want to hear any of these tall tales when you guys come back this afternoon. She's going to. But she always gives him that admonishment. Shri Shri Panchata.
Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki.
And he was one of Nityananda Prabhu's main preachers. The systematic kind of real canvassing, preaching of Krishna Bhakti following Lord Chaitanya, especially teaching the glories of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya taught, worship Krishna, chant Krishna's name, serve Krishna. Lord Nityananda said, worship Gauranga, serve Gauranga, chant Gauranga's name. He was a little bit of a wild man. So he had this band they're called the Dvadasha Gopals because they're all in Sakya Rasa. And they were preaching Krishna consciousness all over Bengal and beyond. very vigorously. Gauridas Pandit was one of the main, Gauridas Pandit in Krishna Lila is identified with Subal, who was one of Krishna's most intimate friends. There are 4 different groups of friends, and among those, there's the Priyanarma Sakhas. These 4 main divisions of friends have different flavors. So the Sakhas, their friendship is colored with a sense of servitorship. The Priya Sakhas, pure friendship, untinged by other sentiments. The Suhrit Sakhas, the older boys like Sri Dama, Baladev, and others, theirs is tinged with some parental, superior feeling. And the Priyanarma Sakhas, it's a whole different thing. Among all the cowherd boyfriends, these boys are able to have some appreciation for Krishna's romantic dealings with Radharani and the gopis, and they often act as go-betweens. And Subal is the chief among them. Subal looks very much like Radharani. They're practically identical except boy and girl, and there's this wonderful pastime I don't have any time to really talk about, I can just kind of like nod at, where Subal and Radharani switch clothes so Srimati can meet with Krishna. That would make this arrangement to sneak her out of her house on the pretense of Subal coming and looking for a calf, and then Subal walking out of the house with that calf to go meet Krishna. And there's a whole pastime about that. And many temples actually on Gopashtami, some temples on Gopashtami and others on, I think, the Tritiya of the same month, the 3rd day of the same month rather than, they dress Radharani up as a cowherd boy, as Subal, and sometimes it's just heart-meltingly charming. My friend in North Carolina, Bhakti Rasa, has these deities who go Radha Madhava. When she dresses her Radharani up as Subal and Gopashtami, it just kind of makes your mind, it just unhinges your mind. What am I seeing? And I'm always happy to see that every year. Krishna Balaram Mandir, I think, as well. They dress Radharani up as Subal. Other temples do it on the Tritiya, other temples don't do it. For the temples who do that, that's the one day of the year we're allowed to see her lotus feet. It happens naturally because she's wearing a dhoti. Others do it, they show her feet on Radhashtami. They just hike her skirt up just a little bit. So the devotees just get that one thrill. And I used to have, Badri Narayan Maharaj used to ask me to do the Sandhya Arti on Radhashtami in San Diego, because he knew that even though I'm introverted and shy, I would make this fun at the end of the evening for everybody, and I'd just go crazy with the curtains, and the devotees would go crazy looking at Radharani's lotus feet. So Subal is so important, but I'm going to hope I come back to that. I know the devotees are eager to complete their Ekadashi Vrat, but this is Rupa Goswami. So this is a special pastime. We find this at the beginning of the Antya Lila. After the Gundicha Marjana, Lord Chaitanya goes to see Srila Rupa Goswami, and he says, do not try to take Krishna out of Vrindavan, for he doesn't go anywhere else at any time. The Krishna known as Yadu Kumar is Vasudeva Krishna. He's different from the Krishna who is the son of Nanda Maharaj. Yadu Kumar Krishna manifests his pastimes in the cities of Mathura and Dwarka, where he's perfect and more perfect. We were reading that in my Monday, Wednesday, Friday group the other night. But the Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, never at any time leaves Vrindavan, therefore he's most perfect. After saying this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to perform his noontime duties, leaving Srila Rupa Goswami somewhat surprised. I mean, he just showed up and blurted this out. Don't you even think, because he knows Srila Rupa Goswami is very busy writing. And so Rupa Goswami says, Satyabhama ordered me to write 2 different dramas. Now I understand that this order has been confirmed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Formerly I wrote the 2 dramas as one composition. Now I shall divide it and describe the incidents in 2 separate works. So this is Vidukta Madhava and Lalita Madhava. And one focuses on pastimes in Mathura and Vrindavan, basically where Krishna is remembering his pastimes. In Mathura and Dwarka, basically where Krishna is remembering, sometimes in his sleep, lying next to Rukmini, his association with the gopis in Vrindavan. And so now he decides to divide them into, he's thinking, okay, Lord Chaitanya has confirmed this instruction from Satyabhama. So I shall write two separate invocations of good fortune and two different introductions. Let me think deeply about the matter and then describe the two different sets of incidents. During the Rath Yatra ceremony, Rupa Goswami saw Lord Jagannath. He also saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing and chanting in front of the Rath. When Rupa Goswami heard a verse uttered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the ceremony, he immediately composed another verse. My haikus come spontaneously. The other poetry I write, it's very laborious. As I've already described these incidents, but I wish to add briefly something more. This is cool. Generally, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recited a verse while dancing and chanting before the Rath, but no one knew why he was reciting that particular verse. Only Swarup Damodar Goswami knew the purpose for which the Lord recited that verse. According to the Lord's attitude, he used to quote other verses to enable, Swarup Damodar used to quote other verses to enable the Lord to relish these verses. Rupa Goswami, however, could understand the intention of the Lord, and thus he composed another verse that appealed to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was singing, Lord Chaitanya was singing this verse that could have been like from a pop love song or something, you know. And you're wondering, why is this sannyasi singing this pop song, this love song, at the Rath Yatra, this huge religious festival? So Rupa Goswami understood it, and he composed this. That very personality, this is the verse recited by Lord Chaitanya. That very personality who stole my heart during my youth is now again my master. These are the same moonlit nights in the month of Chaitra. The fragrance of malati flowers is there, and the same sweet breezes are blowing from the Kadamba forest. In our intimate relationship, I'm also the same lover, but still my mind is not happy here. I am eager to go back to that place on the bank of the Reva under the Vetasi tree. That is my desire. So older people, sometimes they look back on their youth and they think, oh, that was such a sweet romance that I had with so-and-so. So this is Rupa Goswami's gloss on that verse. My dear friend, now I have met my very old and dear friend Krishna on this field of Kurukshetra. So this is celebrating, this is what Rath Yatra is about, bringing Krishna home, right? And that's what Lord Chaitanya is telling Rupa Goswami. Okay, we're bringing Krishna home. Don't you ever think about taking him anywhere else again. So therefore you've got to separate these two dramas. So this is kind of, Rath Yatra is celebrating Krishna coming to Kurukshetra to meet with the residents of, ultimately to meet with the residents of Vrindavan and Radharani and the gopis. At which time they give him a bit of a hard time, being a big liar. And he's like, oh my. So it's really sweet. I am the same Radharani, and now we are meeting together. It is very pleasant, but I would still like to go to the bank of the Jamuna beneath the trees of the forest there. I wish to hear the vibration of his sweet flute playing the fifth note within that forest of Vrindavan. After writing this verse on a palm leaf, Rupa Goswami put it somewhere in his thatched roof and went to bathe in the sea. While he's bathing in the sea, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there to meet him, and he saw that leaf pushed in the thatching on the roof, saw that verse, and he began to read it. After reading the verse, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was overwhelmed by ecstatic love. At that very time, Rupa Goswami returned, having finished bathing in the sea. Seeing the Lord, Rupa Goswami fell flat in the courtyard to offer obeisances. The Lord slapped him mildly in love and spoke as follows: "My heart is very confidential. How did you know my mind in this way?" After saying this, he firmly embraced Sri Rupa Goswami. It's kind of a mock. How dare you? I mean, where did you get this idea? And how dare you share it so publicly? It's like, you know, so that's where the slap came from. And then he embraced him because he says, yes, you know my heart. And this is a real disciple. They know the Guru's heart. Vishram Dena Gurose, one of the most important, very basic aspects of Krishna Bhakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took that verse and showed it to Swarup Damodar for him to examine. Everything went through Swarup Damodar. Anybody wanted to present anything to Lord Chaitanya, it had to first be vetted by Swarup Damodar for philosophical correctness. The real piece. How could Rupa Goswami have understood my heart? The Lord asked. Swarup Damodar replied, I can understand that you've already bestowed your causeless mercy upon him. No one could otherwise understand this meaning. I can therefore guess that previously you bestowed upon him your causeless mercy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, Rupa Goswami met me at Prayag, knowing him to be a suitable person. I naturally bestowed my mercy on him. I thereupon also bestowed on him my transcendental potency. Now you should give him instructions, in particular, instruct him in transcendental knowledge. So Swarup Damodar he was like everybody who approached Mahaprabhu, especially in Puri. He was the guru for everybody. Raghunath Das Goswami came begging for personal instructions from Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu said, finally he said, okay, here's the deal. You want some instruction from me? Living in the renounced order of life, don't wear fancy clothes, don't eat fancy food, don't indulge in gossip. Everything else you can learn from Swarup Damodar. So Swarup Damodar said, as soon as I saw the unique composition of this verse, I could immediately understand that you had bestowed your mercy on him, your special mercy on him. By seeing the result, one can understand the cause of that result. Right? You look for the result, and try to understand the cause. And he quotes a verse about that. One day, while Srila Rupa Goswami was writing his book, Sri Chaitanya, I just want to, because this part is just really cool, I wanted to skip ahead and get to this part. And Gauridas Pandit, we'll just have to leave for another time. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly appeared. He's just kind of popping up like this all the time. As soon as Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami saw the Lord coming, they both stood up and then fell down to offer him their respectful obeisances. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them both and then sat down. The Lord inquired, what kind of book are you writing? He held up a palm leaf that was a page of the manuscript, and when he saw the fine handwriting, his mind was very pleased. Thus being pleased, the Lord praised the writing by saying, the handwriting of Srila Rupa Goswami is just like rows of pearls. Rupa Goswami's writing was so beautiful that it completely won Mahaprabhu's heart, and he glorified just the handwriting itself as being as beautiful as rows of pearls. And sometimes some devotees will share photos of Rupa Goswami's manuscripts, and you can see his handwriting is just very meticulous. It's the opposite of mine. While reading the manuscript, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw a verse on that page, and as soon as he read it, he was overwhelmed by ecstatic love. And this is one of the verses that Dravida has so much fun with. I can't do it justice, the Sanskrit justice at all, without having practiced for a half an hour beforehand, and I didn't have time this morning. So I'll just read the translation and we'll end there. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. When that name enters the holes of the ears, we then desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert. In other words, we become completely overwhelmed by the sattvika bhava called pralaya, devastation. We become stunned like dead. And there's more, but it's late. And I'm just going to stop here without even entertaining. Well, unless there's something really pressing and brief.
I just want to know, who was such
You see me looking over the rim of my glasses here.
I wondered how Rupa Goswami was told by Satyabhama. Who was Satyabhama?
Satyabhama is Krishna's wife
Right,
in
right.
Dwarka. One of
So
Krishna's
how
wives.
could he be told by Krishna's wife?
How could he not be told? He lived in Lord Chaitanya's heart, and Lord Chaitanya lives in his.
Okay. Like a spiritual thing.
Yeah. It's a spiritual thing. We wouldn't understand. But we would like to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
At
why
least
we
the
asked.
concept of it.
That's why we asked. No, he received dictation from her in his heart. I think this is probably discussed maybe somewhere else, maybe in Bhagavatam. I mean, Krishnadas Kaviraj says this is discussed elsewhere, but I just want to add these couple of cool things to it. You know, one is about how Rupa Goswami was able to understand that song that Lord Chaitanya was singing. And the other thing was how Lord Chaitanya was so affected by the beauty of his writing, of the Lalita Madhava, Vidakta Madhava, that he even praised his handwriting, the beauty of his handwriting. Okay, so that's just a little bit of Rupa Goswami. Gauridas Pandit, maybe next time. Thank you so much. Grantharaj, Shri Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Goswami. Pada Ki Jai, Shri Gauridas Pandit Mahashaya.